Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Strategic Pause, where today you are joining us to talk about community, all things community. So,
I love it.
hello, Jill.
Hello, Katrina. I love it. I love community. I love this topic. I'm very excited.
So, what is it that you love about this topic? Tell me more, Jill.
I think I have always been really interested in what makes a community without framing it that way. For a long time, I've always been curious about why people live where they live and why people are involved in what they're involved in. Like if somebody tells me they're in a club or something, I am immediately fascinated because I want to know all the things, why, what's it about. I just find it really interesting to learn about people. And what I really have kind of honed in on really only the last year is I'm really interested in how people create community for themselves and for others. And it's just a topic that I would love to, sometimes I've said if somebody would pay me to go to school, I would just go to school for the rest of my life. But like getting a PhD around community, like I would do that someday. But
Oh, that would be cool.
right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think when I think of community, I think of a few things. I think there's like the very intentional community that we try to create
Mm-hmm.
and that we invite people to. And I think there are the communities that just kind of happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and then and then there are the communities, maybe this one may be a reach, that we get invited to sometimes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
come on over, be part of
Mm-hmm.
this. Um, and so I'm kind of curious, like what they all have in common. And then maybe like as we think about learning and development, as we think about organizations, as we think about teams, like where should we be focusing on the community that we very intentionally build? And what does that take? Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we only have, you know, 30 minutes or something. Because everything you just said, I'm just gonna start talking and I'll see you tomorrow. But so there's a study that it's the longest study that's ever, it's the longest study in the United States. You've probably heard of it. And it's
Yeah,
basically says longevity study, right? What is the one thing that we all need in order to live the longest possible life? And it's not heart health and it's not are you tall, it's social connection, right? And
right.
it's having connection with others. And that to me is fascinating. Because that is in theory something we have full control over, really. I mean, some of us are very fortunate to be born in strong communities, to be born with strong familial ties that turns into a community, and some of us are not. So I recognize it's definitely harder for some people or others, but we can all be a part of a community with effort on our part. And that to me is really interesting because it's something there's so much that we don't have control over right now. So much. We do, in sense, have control over that. And I like that idea, I
Yeah.
think.
So I guess the question, I'm full of questions today. I just feel like I should come with that label. I've got lots of questions today.
Should I picture like a question mark like over
Yeah.
your head?
Blink,
Because
blink,
that's what I
blink. You
am
should. Oh, I can't. I'm
picturing.
like trying to draw it, but suddenly it came out as like a semicolon.
Like a
I'm not sure
squiggle.
why. Exactly. Um, so what is it that makes a community a community?
Oh, I mean, I guess in the very logistical sense, which is, my brain, I tend to go to logistics first. There is something that ties you, right? I guess. So it could
Yeah.
be we live in the same place. It could be we have the same religion. It could be we like the same sport. Um but I think at a deeper level, true community is where you feel accepted, right? It's a
Yeah.
place or with people or whatever, where you kind of feel like you can, on some level, show up as who you are, and those people may not love that always, but they accept that. Um, so I think there's two kind of parts, but I'm curious, what do you think?
I think you're onto something. I think we have to have a shared value. I think we have to have a shared purpose for coming together as a community. And I think sometimes we build that together. Um, I, I'm I'm thinking about. I can't talk about community without thinking about my friend Anna Maria Dorgo, um, who is the she was the catalyst behind L&D Shakers, which is a large learning and development community, and they have amazing opportunities for people in that community. And I know she has often said, and I'm not, this is not a direct quote in any way, but she's often said that, community isn't about one person and it's not one person starting a community. It's the group coming together, having that shared view, having values, and having something they contribute together. So
Yeah.
that creates the community, and that's also keeps the community going. Um,
I like the contribution piece. I think that is important.
mhm.
I didn't touch on that, but I like that a lot actually.
Yeah, I think we feel most valued anywhere, whether it's in our family or in our our neighborhood or
Mhm.
work community, when we have something meaningful that we can give.
So I'm gonna question you. So I'm gonna put a question
Ooh.
on top of my head.
Boop, boop,
I
boop.
think you have started a community with Let's
Mhm.
Learn, and there's a book group, and there's and this is free, by the way. Katrina does this for free, so this is not monetized. Um, but I think when I first went to a Let's Learn, it was a little bit of an eye opener to me about this L&D community, which I had not really tapped in. I've been in that industry for many, many years in different ways, but I have never really connected with a lot of people in the L&D industry. So you really opened my eyes, I think, to this whole community that was out there. But I see you as a community builder. So my question to you, I guess, is what about that drives you or feels strong enough for you to actually do something and get it off the ground?
So, if we go back in time to 2020, you might remember that it was a difficult time
No,
for
nothing
some of
happened
us,
in
for
that
all
year.
of us. No,
It's
nothing at
fine.
all.
Yeah,
Nothing
fine.
at all. Funny, we thought things were really bad then. But anyway, jeez. Oh.
We're so cute.
So I had a really strong need to figure out how I was actually going to go forward with my work. Like
Mm.
did most of my work in person. So, kind of very selfishly, I wanted a community. I wanted to bring together people. And I mean, we literally called it Let's Learn Together so that we could figure out together, like, what is this going to look like? We
Mm.
started in March of 2020 or 2020. And so it was just like, okay, let's talk about what's going on. Let's support each other. And then that grew. And it is a really strong group. And I call it a gathering. And
Mm.
I'm making that distinction from a community because I think if I decided that I was not going to get the group together anymore, the community wouldn't go on
Oh, interesting. Okay.
because I've taken on that role of
Yeah.
like, I schedule it, everything. So,
Mhm.
so yes, it's a community of people, but I don't know that it's really a community when I think about stepping away from it.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
and I think that, and I bring that up because that's one of the distinctions I've heard Anna Maria make is
Mm.
that her, L&D Shakers was not reliant on her.
Oh, I see.
She brought it together, and that contribution piece means that there were people in place that she can step away and it still goes forward. And that I haven't created that with the with Let's Learn. Now and I might be just splitting hairs here, that it's still a community of people. It's still
Yeah.
people relate to it. I just don't know that they have the contribution that that true community would have. I could kind of liken it. I I I don't know this is the best analogy, and I don't mean to minimize anybody's participation in Let's Learn, but it's kind of like a family that sometimes you
Yeah.
rely on mom for a lot. And when mom's gone, maybe they'll eat.
But that is interesting because I wonder if you said, "I'm not doing this anymore," if anybody would step up, and I feel like there could be. I mean, it could be one of those
Yeah,
things where if I actually asked my son to make dinner, he would, but he's not gonna volunteer making dinner unless he thinks, like, he actually has to, so
right,
there could
right.
be something to that also.
Well, and I think we could take from that an opportunity, whether it's the Let's Learn community or a community you're trying to create in your organization, that we involve people and have those contributions right up front, so that we're basing it around everyone bringing something
Yeah.
rather than just relying on one person.
Which is interesting because that got me thinking. Well, it got me thinking about two things. Number one is a reality TV show on Netflix called Unlocked. But number two is this work I'm doing with a team. And as you're talking about, I'm thinking is what we're really trying to do is help them be a community to each other, in some ways. And that really does require a little bit of like, okay, well, what's our goal and what do we want to bring to the team and what can you bring and what's your contribution? Um, which is really what high performing teams are. I mean, if we get down to it,
Right.
they are a community in many ways, but we don't necessarily think of that. And that just, you just gave me that parallel, which is really interesting. I hadn't really connected those two things yet.
Yeah, and I think of the high performing teams that I've worked with in the past, years and years ago, worked with high performing teams within state government that chose to have no supervisor, and
Oh,
that required a strong sense of not just your
yes.
direction, but a strong sense of what do each of us bring. And then with that, a really strong sense of how we communicate. All
Yes.
the things that we talk about on an organizational level, you have to bring complete specific focus to on that team level to have a truly high performing team.
That is really interesting. Oof, there's lots of stuff there. I mean, in my experience, you're absolutely right. But when teams don't have a leader, they tend to, maybe crumble's not the right word, but they do tend to stall, I think. But
Right.
I also think that we don't need to look at leadership in the typical, I am the manager, you report to me kind of way. I don't think that's necessary. You could have a leader in multiple different ways that's leading that community. And that's where if the leader has to step out, are there other leaders? Um, is really interesting, but I'm gonna relate it to the reality show real quickly, which is, so for all of you listening, I don't love all reality show, but I do love some reality TV, and primarily just because it's a relief from real life, right? So there's this reality show right now on Netflix, and it's called Unlocked. I am not going to debate the pros and cons of the prison system. We will not do that. That will not be something we do here. But this show is essentially an experiment in community. And they take this certain unit and they basically say, okay, we're not going to lock you down. You're going to be able to stay in or out of your cells all the time. And the goal really is to try to get them to work as a community to try to increase the rates of folks who stay out of jail once they get out of jail. So try to kind of teach them. Now, we can argue all day long as if they go about this the right way, but it is really interesting when you watch it. There are a couple people who sort of step up as leaders and try to kind of create a little bit of a sense of, well, what are our, norms? What are our social norms? I don't use those words. And I think ultimately it is a success, I guess, depending on how you define that. It's also reality TV, so who knows? But ultimately, what really does make it work is there are a couple people who sort of stand up and help guide the team and really help kind of put together some things they can agree on and really do take that contribution, that role up front of a leader. And truly, it's not that different in a high performing team, right? If you've got the manager out on leave, you've got to have people who feel strongly about contribution and what the team does and what the team gives back. There you go, Netflix. Drawing parallels to prison is what we're doing today, I guess.
Well, I think for some people, work feels like prison, right?
That's true
You're
too.
sentenced to it. You have to
Yeah.
do it. You have options, but I think there are a lot of people that, at the end of the day, you got to pay your mortgage or your
Yeah.
rent, and but I think in both instances, whether you're talking about prison or whether you're talking about a work team, it, it really hinges on being clear on what the goal is.
Yeah.
Really hinge it. And I think in my experience in bringing it back to community is that you really have to know, like, let me that's not the path I wanted to go down. Um, it's a good thing, like I'm not required to speak for a living. Um,
Wow, that would be terrible.
that would be terrible. That was sarcasm, just in case it wasn't apparent. Um, eh, the type of work that is done, that's needed, will often determine how strong a team or a community can be. And I think if we defined, like, some work just does not lend itself to team structure. And so I
Yeah.
think some oh wow, now I'm gonna like make a parallel to the world, which is
To
hard right
prison?
now.
Because I did that already.
Well, maybe prison might be safer. Um, uh, and now I lost the train of thought. That we're just gonna have to cut this out entirely because I just sucked at this. It was so clear in my head, and then I lost it. Like,
It's
gone. Like,
okay.
it's totally gone. Totally gone. Ah.
You were
Um,
gonna make a parallel to life, and I
yeah.
said to prison, and you said maybe prison's easier.
Yeah. It was I'm gonna talk into, like, absolute, like, unrelated words, and I apologize. Uh, but I think
No.
what I was getting at, what I was trying to get to is that some communities don't work well and don't last because they don't have a clear purpose. And that
Yeah,
can be communities that come together in the workplace, that can be communities that come together in our world.
yeah,
That without that clear purpose, when I don't feel like I have something meaningful to add, then then they they go away. They don't last.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that's really key, and I think if we do equate that to, teams in the workplace, we'll really see there's a lot of parallels between teams who feel very strongly about what they're doing and what their role is, and teams who are kind of floundering in the sense of like, what are we even doing here? Um, and it is so much easier to get on board and to move forward. I worked with a team a couple weeks ago, and every single one of them said they were overwhelmed because they
Mhm.
just had so much work, right? That I heard that over and over and over again. And then they had to do sort of a mini assessment, a mini team assessment. And essentially, the crux of it was they all described their team as a really high performing team. They all said they actually really enjoyed their job. But, an hour ago, they were just talking about how overwhelmed and overstressed they were. And I think both things were true, but they really did for all the things, they knew what they were there for. They had a core purpose. They knew why they worked at that organization and they knew what their role was within the organization. And I hadn't really connected that until right now, but I think you're absolutely right. They are probably still stressed. It's only been 2 weeks. Stressed and overwhelmed and feel like they're overworked, but also, have really high engagement. They like each other, they like their team. Um
Right.
and there's something to be said for that just understanding of what I'm doing here and what we're doing here.
And what that thing you're doing, how that thing you're doing is impacting the world or your customer, when they can draw that line from their
Yeah.
work to the what that connects to, I think provides even stronger, uh, just more meaning, more engagement, stronger connection to each other.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
yeah,
we have a lot of lost opportunity. I don't know, "we's" not the right word maybe, but there is a lot of lost opportunity, and I think people who could find community in work. But there is a sense sometimes that people don't feel like they should have friends at work or don't feel like they should get close with anybody at work. And, I understand that they've had things in the past that have caused them not be able to trust people at work in the future. But what it comes down to is if you have a full time job, you are probably with the people at work more than you're with most of your family members. And
right.
you don't have to love them all, but if you can find a couple of people that you relate to and you can feel connected with, that can go a long way. And so whenever I hear someone say, I don't have friends at work, I feel a little sad. Not only because some of my best friends I met at work, but because it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity for connection. And I want that for everybody. And I know everybody doesn't feel like they have that. Um,
Yeah, I,
yeah.
I think I think you're right. I think going back to the longevity study, we know
Hmm.
we need it.
Right.
And I think that's why the learning and development communities have developed, because learning and development is
Yes.
typically so fragmented. It's a little part
Yes.
of an organization. You're not always understood. It's not uncommon in my work to have, these small one or two people who are responsible for learning and development for the whole organization, and they may be situated in human resources, but they're
Yes.
not really doing the things that human resources are doing. So looking outside of your organization is a great way to feel
Mhm.
supported and understood, and contribute to thinking that you can then bring back to your organization. Um, and then I think definitely as instructional design kind of just exploded with e-learning, and it became more prominent as a position that people could do.
Mhm.
um I think that need for community grew as well. um so that whether you were freelancing or internally a shop of one, you had someone there for support.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you are so right. I mean, on every level. You're just in general, you're so right about everything. Um, but,
I wish.
learning and development, we don't all have the same background. We don't all have the same education. We don't all go to the same school. Every job is not the same. We are not the IT department or the legal department or the finance department. Um, it can be a really lonely um position because to your point, I mean, how many times do we know people are like, I'm the one L&OD person and I report to the person who does payroll. Like it's just there's no real connection in the sense of like what do we do and what's our background and what are we trying to do here? I never thought about
Right.
that. And there are so many L&OD communities that you have opened my eyes to. Um which I also never thought about why that could be.
Yep. I spent some time thinking about it.
Yeah. So
And there
are there like
go.
legal communities the same thing? Or IT
I would
communities?
imagine. I think, communities of practice have been around for a long
Mhm.
time. I think that, and there are definitely like these different levels, right? There's associations which exist to like bring people together, but those are typically, those are organizations in and of themselves.
Right.
And then I think communities, um, it would be interesting to see like if we have more now because of
Mhm.
2020, because of the pandemic. Um, that would be really interesting to see if how those numbers have changed, if they've changed. Um, yeah, I think that social media has probably helped that. We have a mechanism to bring people together in a more informal way. Um, yeah, it would be interesting to know. I think there's
Well,
probably
that's a
community for
whole
anything, right?
there's a whole 'nother side to social media though, because I know that when my son went to college, he said a lot of people didn't leave their dorms very much. They were just in their dorms on social media and they felt like they had that connection, so didn't necessarily need it. I mean, that was our inference. Didn't necessarily need to go to the clubs and do all the things that we all did when we first started college because they had that connection in their device.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my son's experience, his first year of college as well. Like I think that's one of the reasons he chose to move back home after moving to the East Coast and loving the community, loving the town, I should say. Loving the
Yeah.
town, loving the education piece, but not finding his community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
And that's even
So
extra hard because he wasn't from the area, and he didn't go to school nearby and he wasn't from the East Coast and he had all these things kind of working against him as far as community goes. And he had social media, where everybody else kind of was.
right.
So it's a whole nother topic of like that must be really difficult now to be a college student, right? That leaves home like that.
Well, and then I think we can bring it back to the back to kind of to our topic, that what does that mean for us as college students who don't have the same sense of community as
Mm,
they come into organizations, and we're trying to work together, we're trying to create something as an organization, and now we have kind of a whole different set of rules. I mean, and we've
yeah.
always had that, but I think this one's big. I think this is really big when yeah, interesting.
So let me ask you, if somebody was like, I want more community in my life, I want to be in part of more communities, what advice would you give that person?
Oh, man, where do I even begin? I would say I would ask a question, of course, and that question would be something like, "Well, what are you looking for in a community?
Mm,
And what do you love to do? Do you wanna talk to people? Do you wanna get together in person with people? Do you want
mhm.
to grow ideas? Are you just networking? Are you looking for job placement? Do you wanna read books? Like, what is it you wanna do? And then we'll find you the perfect community." Because I know that was, like, totally nerdy, huh?
You could be there's a business for this, Katrina. Like, you could be the community matchmaker. I feel like there's something here. I don't want a husband. I have that. I would just like a community. Could you find that for me?
Geo Connecting people to ideas and people is one of my favorite things to do. I
Oh,
love
I
it.
love
I
that.
love it. So, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you're looking for a community, like seriously, and I will connect you to a community that fits. The L&D Shakers is a fabulous community that is it's got like everything and anything that you want. I love the L&D Collective specifically because Joseph um, Diaz has a fabulous book group
Mm.
that and he facilitates it so well. Uh, and I could just keep going. And I could get there's Let's Learn Together the first Friday of every month. And this year we're continuing our fabulous um theme of women in learning and development. Yeah. So
I love
exciting
that.
topics there. So yeah, I mean there's really like, I can do a little matchmaking. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I am constantly on LinkedIn, like, I tagging people on other people's
Yeah, you're
posts
really
because,
good at
like,
that.
I I okay, I'm gonna totally be nerdy here. I love people. Like, I really
Mm.
do. I, like, truly, truly love people. I love finding out, like, what makes somebody tick,
Yes.
and and I just think the more we connect with the people who we are are going to gain something from
Mm.
or that we're like in thoughts and ideas, like the better the world will be.
I love that. And I feel like that's where we should end because I think that's the most beautiful sentiment about community that I could have imagined.
Yay.
Yay. All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Jill.
listening.
Thanks for
Goodbye,
being part of our
friends.
community.
Thanks. Oh, yeah. Thanks for being a part of our community. Goodbye, friends.